I never had any expectation that my life would undergo such an unexpected transformation. Several years ago, I would have responded that my life was normal and even enjoyable. I married my spouse Ryan in a stunning ceremony that was attended by our family and friends. Kind, diligent, and dependable, he was everything I had envisioned. Life, however, has a tendency to manifest in unexpected ways. And that is precisely what transpired to me. In college, Ryan and I encountered each other, fell in love, and married immediately following our graduation. Our relocation was to a suburban residence that was both comfortable and inviting, featuring a white picket fence and a spacious backyard that was ideal for hosting summer barbecues. Everything appeared to be flawless from the outside. I began to sense that something was missing as the years passed. There was a hollowness in my marriage that I could not disregard, although I was unable to identify it. Ryan was not a negative spouse. Far from it. He was a superb provider, consistently ensuring that we had all the necessary items. However, I experienced some emotional distance. We ceased engaging in profound discussions and were unable to giggle as freely as we once did. We had shifted our focus from connection to procedures and responsibilities in our relationship. Additionally, Emily, Ryan's younger sibling, was present. Almost in every aspect, she was his antithesis. Free-spirited, adventurous, and brimming with vitality. From the instant I encountered her, I was captivated by her energetic presence. She had this ability to infuse even the most mundane occasions with excitement. After we were married, I recall the initial occasion on which she visited us. I envied her in a sense, as she had recently returned from a year of traveling abroad and filled our home with stories of her adventures, her laughter reverberating throughout. She is capable of living with such abandon and without apology. Over time, Emily and I developed a close relationship. However, she was not merely my sister-in-law. I considered her a buddy. We engaged in lengthy conversations, discussing our aspirations, anxieties, and disappointments. She had the ability to make me feel seen in a manner that I had not experienced in a long time. She was simple to be around. Unlike Ryan, with whom I found that every conversation seemed to revolve around work or responsibilities, I felt comfortable being myself with Emily. I failed to recognize the moment at which my emotions began to change. At first, it was merely a profound admiration, a friendship that seemed more significant than the majority. However, there were also the inconsequential moments, such as the way my pulse would race when she touched my arm and the way I eagerly anticipated her visits more than anything else. I assured myself that it was nothing more than a close bond. However, in my heart, I was aware that it was worth more. While Ryan was away on a business vacation one evening, Emily visited him for dinner. We shared a chuckle as we struggled to cook a new recipe. Reminiscing about old recollections, we sat on the couch with a bottle of wine after dinner. The conversation became more serious when she inquired about my happiness. However, I hesitated before responding. I am unsure, I acknowledged this. I have a sense that I ought to be. Ryan is a commendable chap. Our lifestyle is consistent, however, there is an absence of something. As if she comprehended my intentions precisely, she nodded. Occasionally, we opt for what is secure rather than what elicits a sense of vitality, she said tenderly. Her words delivered a greater impact on me than I had anticipated. I gazed at her, truly gazing at her, and for the first time, I allowed myself to acknowledge the emotions that had been plaguing me forever. A connection existed between us, which I was unable to articulate but could not deny either. Everything was altered from that night forward. We began spending more time together, continuously devising reasons to meet. The intimacy of our conversations increased as we exchanged unspoken words and lingering glances. I was aware of the peril and of the fact that I was experimenting with fire, but I was unable to refrain from doing so. Emily invited me to accompany her on a walk one afternoon. I would never have gone through with it independently. I was not particularly inclined towards outdoor activities. However, she made it seem like an expedition. Talking about everything and nothing, We spent hours strolling through the trails. Sitting on a boulder, we gazed out at the view upon reaching the summit of the hill. Taking a deep breath, she stated, "This is what I love about life. Small instances that evoke a sense of vitality." Watching her, I felt a stirring within me, a sensation that I had suppressed for an excessive amount of time. "I wish I experienced that emotion more frequently," I acknowledged. She turned her gaze towards me, her eyes surveying my face. "Yes, you are entitled to." I felt a chill run down my spine as a result of the way she glanced at me and the tone of her voice. Despite my desire to express my gratitude to her, the words were unable to escape my lips. As an alternative, we remained in silence, with the burden of unacknowledged emotions weighing heavily on our shoulders. The moment I realized that this was not merely a friendship, but rather something more profound, I was unable to disregard it any longer. No matter how hard I fought it, I was aware that my existence was about to undergo a transformation that I had never anticipated. I found it impossible to escape the emotions that had become entrenched in me following that day on the hiking trail. Everything in my life felt as though a switch had been turned, and everything in it was suddenly different. I was always aware that something was lacking, however, I was now unable to disregard the nature of the absence. There was an inexplicable attraction between Emily and me, an attraction that simultaneously horrified and delighted me. I attempted to persuade myself that nothing had changed, and that I could continue to portray my feelings for her as a close friendship for an extended period. Unfortunately, the tension intensified with each encounter. It was evident in the manner in which she regarded me, the way she touched my arm when she chuckled, and the way our conversations seemed to revolve around an unspoken subject. Although Ryan was still on his business trip, Emily and I developed an even stronger bond during his absence. She began to visit more frequently, occasionally staying late into the night while we conversed about the most mundane of topics. I felt lighter when I was with her, as if I could finally breathe. One evening, she extended an invitation to me to attend an art exhibition in the downtown area. She was consistently enthusiastic about art, a subject that I had never had the opportunity to investigate personally. Nevertheless, I concurred without hesitation. With her, I would have traveled to any destination. It was difficult for me to comprehend the abstract paintings that were displayed in the diminutive yet stunning gallery. Conversely, Emily navigated the area with ease, highlighting aspects of the paintings that I would have overlooked. She stood in front of a canvas that was adorned with deep blues and golds, and she stated, "This one is about longing." In an effort to obtain her perspective, I inclined my head. The sensation was recognized by me, and she smiled, her eyes flickering to mine. "How do you know?" There was a significance that hung between us, a weight to her words. Heart thumping, I forced down a hard swallow. Following the exhibit, we visited a small cafe in the vicinity. Quiet, it was the type of location where individuals conversed in whispers in dimly illuminated corners and lingered over coffee. As we sat across from one another enjoying our beverages, Emily grabbed my hand. It was a minimal gesture that could have been dismissed as informal, but it was not. Looking down at our hands, I then turned my gaze back to her. "Who is Emily?" She shook her head slightly, her lips expressing a melancholy smile. "There is no need for you to comment, I simply..." She hesitated. "Just wanted to inform you that you are not alone in this situation." The words she spoke caused a chill to run down my spine. "It is this." She was aware. It was also felt by her. I experienced a sense of recognition for the first time in an extended period. Authentically observed. And that was both gorgeous and terrifying. The days that followed were characterized by an intensity that I was not anticipating. Every time I was with Emily, it was as though the world around us dissipated, leaving only the two of us in the weight of what we were not saying. But when I was with Ryan, I felt as though I was a stranger in my own existence. I had always been adept at assuming the role of the devoted wife. Conversely, it appeared to be unattainable at this time. I discovered that I was evading Ryan in order to avoid the conversations I was aware I should be having. Thus, I would make justifications to be out of the house or to go to bed early. Emily contacted me one afternoon and inquired whether I would like to go for a drive. I proceeded without hesitation. The wind tangled our hair as we drove with the windows down, and the radio played soothing music. The silence between us was comforting, charged with an unspoken energy, despite the fact that neither of us spoke much. She eventually stopped at a remote location by the lake. The sky was being painted in hues of pink and orange as the sun was beginning to set. She gazed out at the water while leaning against the bonnet of the vehicle. Do you ever experience the sensation of living someone else's life? I stood beside her, folding my arms. Consistently. She then gazed at me, her expression unintelligible. What if you were not obligated to? I was unable to exhale. Emily, She shook her head. I am aware. Complicated. I do not wish for you to be miserable. Tears streamed down my face. It is not that straightforward. I understand, she answered quietly. However, it is possible that it is. I gazed at her at that moment. She was scrutinized with a keen eye. She was providing me with an opportunity that I had never even entertained as a possibility. In retreat. Life of a distinct nature. However, was I sufficiently courageous to accept it? I came to the realization that I was on the brink of a decision that would have a profound impact on everything as the sun sank below the horizon. The days that transpired subsequent to that evening by the lake were among the most challenging of my life. I experienced a sensation of being entangled between the life I had established and the life I was slowly realizing I desired, as if I were being tugged in two distinct directions. Every moment spent with Emily was a refreshing respite, a glimmer of something authentic and genuine. However, every moment spent with Ryan served as a reminder of the dedication I had pledged to our families, the assurances I had expressed in front of them, and the stability that had long been my solace. I initiated a policy of avoiding Emily. I was compelled to do so, not because I desired to. The intensity between us had reached a critical juncture. I was aware that if I continued to be in her presence, I would commit an act that I would be unable to undo. However, she did not make the situation any simpler. She would send me occasional texts throughout the day, such as a picture of a book she believed I would enjoy, a random thought about a topic we had previously discussed, or a straightforward thought of you. Ryan observed that something was amiss whenever my resolve faltered. He finally spoke one evening as we sat across from each other at the dinner table, nibbling at our food in silence. Are you in good health? He inquired, his brow furrowing in apprehension. I made an effort to beam. Yes, I am simply fatigued. He did not appear to be persuaded. You have been aloof of late. I forced a firm swallow in order to evade his gaze. I have experienced considerable tension at work. I believe he was aware that it was a lie. However, he refrained from exerting himself. Maybe he was averse to learning the truth. Emily arrived at my doorstep several evenings later. Ryan had already retired to bed as it was late. I hesitated before opening it, but upon observing her standing there, I realized that I could no longer maintain my pretense. I murmured to Emily, "You are not permitted to be present," as I exited the building and secured the door behind me. She gazed at me, her eyes alight on mine. She stated, "I am unable to continue with this. I am unable to maintain the illusion that our relationship is merely a friendship, and I am confident that you are unable to do the same." I opened my mouth to respond, but no words emerged. She approached with a lowered voice and took a step closer. "I have feelings for you, and I believe you feel the same way about me. However, I must be informed if you are considering him, as I am unable to continue residing in this in-between state." My eyes welled with tears. "Emily?" She reached for my hand and gently squeezed it. "I will withdraw if you desire to be with him. However, if there is even a faint inkling that you desire an alternative, I must be informed." I felt my heart pounding in my bosom. I had never been more horrified in my life, and for the first time, I expressed it aloud. "I also have affection for you." She abruptly exhaled, as if she had been suppressing her breath. However, I acknowledge that I am unaware of how to accomplish this. Ryan is not deserving of this, and I am unsure of how to simply abandon an existence. With comprehension in her gaze, she nodded. Consequently, refrain from making a decision at this time. Simply be forthright with yourself and with him. I was aware that she was correct. I lie awake that evening, gazing at the ceiling in close proximity to Ryan. I contemplated the events that had brought me to this point, the years of solitude that had deprived me of joy, and the manner in which I had persuaded myself that love was supposed to resemble security rather than passion. I had consistently acted in accordance with the law and pursued the most logical course of action. However, what if I had been mistaken? I sat across from Ryan at the breakfast table the following morning, my hands quivering. "I must converse with you," I stated. His expression was inscrutable as he placed his coffee cup down. Now I exhaled deeply. "I have not been forthcoming with you, and I must rectify this." His expression was strained. "Is there an additional individual?" I hesitated for only a matter of seconds before affirming. He was silent for an extended period of time as his mandible contracted. I swallowed hard when he finally inquired about who. "Emily." I was not anticipating his response. He refrained from yelling or exploding. His expression alternated between astonishment and a more gentle expression as he simply gazed at me. He ultimately admitted I was aware that something was amiss. I had never considered the possibility. He straightened as he ran his hand through his tresses. "What is the duration?" I acknowledged that it took some time. It was not deliberate. "Ryan, I never intended to cause you harm." His laughter was acrid. Loving someone is not an unintentional occurrence. My eyes burned with weeping. "I am aware of this, and I am exceedingly disappointed that it is transpiring. However, I am unable to continue to maintain my facade. It is unjust to either of us." As he gazed downward, his fingertips tapped against the wood of the table. "What is the next course of action?" "I am uncertain," I murmured, "but I must determine the matter." He gingerly nodded. "I am uncertain as to how to respond to that." I did not either. The subsequent weeks were a haze. For the first time in years, Ryan and I engaged in a meaningful conversation. He shared with me how he had sensed my diminishment, and how he had disregarded the warning signs because he was unwilling to accept them. I, on the other hand, described how I had felt as though I was submerged in a life that appeared flawless from the outside but was void within. We resolved to part ways. Although it was challenging, it was indispensable. Emily supported me throughout the entire process, but she never exerted any pressure on me. I was appreciative of the opportunity she provided me with to independently resolve matters. I stood outside the courthouse as the divorce papers were finally signed, the weight of everything settling over me. For the first time in a long time, I felt liberated, despite the fact that I had ended a marriage and torn apart an existence that I had spent years constructing. Later that day, Emily and I encountered each other at a park. Her response to my presence was silence. She immediately enveloped me in a hug, as if she had always known that this was the place we were intended to be. I acknowledged that I am uncertain about the subsequent events. She conveyed a gentle smile. "We collaborate to resolve the matter." For the first time in my life, that was sufficient. Upon reflection, I have come to the realization that life has a tendency to guide us to the truths we endeavor to deny. For years, I persuaded myself that stability was equivalent to happiness, that everything would be alright as long as I was fulfilling my obligations as a good wife, maintaining a clean home, and maintaining a perfect marriage. However, the reality is that genuine pleasure is not achieved by fulfilling obligations or exceeding expectations. It is derived from honesty, from the silent voice within that informs you when something is not quite right. The most difficult decision I have ever made was to end my marriage. I was compelled to confront the suffering I had inflicted, the decisions I had made, and the life I had to forsake, not because I regretted my feelings for Emily, but because I had to. But in the end, the alternative would have been significantly more detrimental, remaining in an existence that was not intended for me. I am not in possession of all the answers. I am uncertain about the future for Emily and me. However, I am certain of this. Love that is genuine, profound, and irrefutable is not an everyday occurrence. And when you do, you are obligated to respect it, even if it is chaotic or requires making difficult decisions. One lesson I have acquired from this experience is that we cannot conduct our lives according to the expectations of others. It is imperative that we possess the necessary courage to inquire about what genuinely brings us joy, and then to pursue it with determination. It will not always be straightforward. It has the potential to cause discomfort. It may cause items to shatter that you never intended to break. However, the pursuit of an existence that is authentic is always worthwhile. The story's just beginning. There are more broken hearts and dark secrets ahead. Hit like, subscribe, and keep exploring with Love Missteps.